one slide. So
Yeah. So this presentation, and thanks for coming in late. Look forward to meeting you later if we get the chance. Um, the show is about electrifying your home, making it more energy efficient, and about the possibility of going solar at some point, and possibly making your next vehicle an electric one. And so you're looking at a house, a pretty typical average house. It's not a fancy house. And it's there intentionally because many of the rebates and tax credits are really set up to benefit most of all lower income, middle income people, and not the wealthy. So that's one thing I really like about the bill. The map on the right side of the slide is showing you where there is a floating wind turbine, wind farm of floating turbines to be developed off the coast of Maine, about 45 miles off of Portland, so far away that you won't be able to see it on the horizon, and uh, located very carefully to avoid the impacts on migrating birds and that kind of thing. So by 2050, Richard Silkman, who's a PhD economist and an energy expert from Maine, thinks that we will be using about 3 times the electricity that we are using now. And it's a big question. Where's all that electricity going to come from? And as things are being planned, the hope is that about half of our energy at the year 2050 will be coming from these offshore wind turbines. Let's go to the next slide. Here's a home with solar on the roof and a list of some of the things that you can save big time in your home and in your transportation. Energy efficient electric appliances like heat pumps, we'll call them appliances tonight. Energy efficiency upgrades for your building envelope, the walls, the roof, even the basement walls and the floor, ways to reduce the intrusion of cold air and the loss of warm air. Solar systems, and not just solar systems on your roof, but possibly an ownership share in a solar farm, or the more modest way of getting a discount on your electricity bills of 10 or 15%. And then there are tax credits for new and used vehicles. Vehicles are a topic of some controversy these days in Maine, and we'll talk about some of that later in the show. And there's more. Next. So there are 2 buckets of savings to help you out from the Inflation Reduction Act. On the left there, the first bucket is the tax credits that can be harvested from the Internal Revenue Service, not state taxes. And of course, if you take a tax credit, you can't take it until the year after you make the modifications or you take advantage of them. You can't take advantage of them immediately. And that can be sometimes a stumbling block for people who don't have the upfront cash and would like to think of the tax credit as lowering the cost. So it does eventually, but not right off. And on the right side are the Inflation Reduction Act rebates. And these are all administered in Maine through Efficiency Maine. The money comes, much of it, from the Inflation Reduction Act, but Efficiency Maine, as you know, probably has been operating for many years, providing rebates to Mainers with their own money, which comes in large part from RGGI, the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative that Maine belongs to. It's sort of a cap and trade way of helping northeastern states reduce their emissions. So keep these 2 buckets in mind as we go along. Next slide. So don't even look at the small print on this slide. I just wanted to make the point that all these tax credits and rebates can get pretty confusing because there are so many of them. And this is only the tip of the iceberg. This is from the Efficiency Maine website. there's small print that relates to a lot of these. And so my intent in this slideshow is to make things a little bit simpler. Next slide. So we'll talk about one thing at a time. We'll break it down into 4 topics: home improvements, weatherization, solar, and my slide formatting has gotten screwed up here a little bit, but no worries. And electric vehicles will be the last. So let's start with home improvements. Next slide. And next slide. So we're talking here about, on this slide, all the things that you can get a tax credit for. And you can get a tax credit and a rebate, both. It's not like one eliminates the possibility of the other. Heat pumps, heat pump water heaters, energy audits, exterior doors, windows, air sealing, which is caulking and finding other ways of reducing the holes in the building envelope through which cold air gets in and warm air gets out. Even there's a tax credit for larger 200 amp breaker panels. If your current panel can't handle the electrification in your home that we're hoping you're going to do, and the Maine Climate Council hopes to, and electric vehicle chargers. So we'll get to the solar and the electric vehicles later in the show. We won't be talking about them in this section. Next slide. So there are also, besides the tax credits, these efficiency Maine rebates. And here's something important to note. You qualify for the largest rebates if your household income is less than 80% of your area's median income. And if your income's a little higher than that, between 80 and 150% of the area median income, the rebates get a little bit smaller. And then there's the rest of us. We qualify for rebates too. So as I was saying earlier, this program really benefits lower income folks the most. And that's, in my opinion, the way it should be. So there's much more information on the Efficiency Maine website about the rebates. I'll be talking about some of them, but there isn't time to talk about all of them in the 45 or 50 minutes I'm going to be chatting with you tonight. Next slide. So this person is taking a look at a website called Rewiring America. And that is along with the Efficiency Maine website, which is very easy to find. Just type Efficiency Maine into your search bar. And Rewiring America, the same deal. Just type in Rewiring America and it will take you to their website. It's a nonprofit that is working across the country trying to get people to electrify their homes and make them more energy efficient. And when you go there, on the home page, you'll see a link to a calculator. And if you click on that calculator and put in 5 pieces of information, a magical thing happens. First, you put in your zip code. That's going to help the computer find what your average median income is, because that varies on where you live. And then you indicate your homeowner status. Are you renting or do you own your home, or is it a condominium, that kind of thing. Then you put in your household income, all the household income you have. And then you indicate whether you file singly or jointly. And then you indicate the number of people in your home, because that also has an effect on what you qualify for in terms of money saving incentives. And then you click calculator, and over on the right, just like you're seeing under the purple box on this slide, up pops all the stuff that you can take a tax credit for or a rebate for. Now, I say that word rebate with a little bit of uncertainty, because I know that Efficiency Maine designs the rebates for Maine, and I don't think that a website that's designed for national use necessarily is accurate on the rebates. So when it comes to rebates, my recommendation would be that you go to the Efficiency Maine website, and that we're going to take a look at that shortly. Next slide. So home appliances, let's start with stoves or ranges, if you want to call them that. A lot of people have gas stoves, love gas stoves because they're quick, responsive. There's something about seeing that flame down there that people like. But when gas is burned, it releases carbon dioxide, which is the main driver of climate change. And many gas burning appliances like stoves leak. Uh, Natural gas, as it's called, is primarily methane, and methane is another warmer of the climate. It works much faster and more disastrously than carbon dioxide, but it doesn't last as long in the atmosphere. Still, it's a serious problem, and there's been news about it recently because the government is trying to get the fossil fuel industry to cap all their methane leaks around the country. US methane pollution from gas stoves is roughly equal to the impact of 500,000 non-electric cars on the climate. So this is not small change. This is pretty big stuff. And that's why when an appliance that uses fossil fuels, like a stove, is on its last legs, or you've just decided that it's not, but I want to do something different anyway, it's important to consider the options that are more kind to Mother Earth. Next slide. So electric appliances don't burn gas, so they don't release carbon dioxide or methane. And you might be saying right now, oh yeah, but they get electricity from the grid. And how is that electricity made? Well, I can tell you that in Maine, we have a pretty clean supply of energy, of electricity. Um, about 65% comes from renewable sources. Um, the largest is wind. I think it's about 25%. And then the second largest is hydro, uh, electricity made by generating uh, electricity at dams. And then comes solar and biomass. Now I may have forgotten something, but those sources constitute about 65% of the standard offer electricity that we use in our home. So it's pretty clean, and with the work the Maine Climate Council is doing, it's going to get cleaner over the next couple of decades. So I mentioned induction ranges here. We bought one during the COVID period and have been very pleased with how it works. It costs a little bit more than a regular range. Sometimes it costs a lot more, but those are very expensive, high-end stoves and ranges that you don't really need unless you're a millionaire, I guess. Um, all right. So, and just to mention that it's the stove top that's induction powered. It's not the oven. The oven is a conventional oven. Next slide. When it's time to upgrade your appliances, that's the time to go electric. And my whole showing this slideshow around my neighboring towns is to help people begin to think about that, because um, things happen suddenly and unexpectedly. My sister-in-law a couple weeks ago lost her hot water heater. She had water all over the floor, and she didn't know about heat pump hot water heaters. And so I was able to help her um, do something quite different from what the technician who came to her home recommended, and save her a bunch of money, not only on the purchase of the water heater, but also on its lifetime savings in terms of energy use. So, um, and as I said earlier, induction cooking is fast and precise. Heat pump hot water heaters cost much less to operate than conventional electric ones. And heat pumps for space heating can harvest energy savings for those heating with oil. Next slide. So we're looking at a circuit breaker panel in somebody's basement here. And if you electrify your home, if you get rid of some of your fossil fuel powered appliances and go with electrical ones, you may find you need to upgrade your panel or put on a sub panel, or you may have some wiring that needs to be redone. And there's a tax credit for those. Where it says there 30% tax credit on labor and materials. It's not just the purchase of the physical item. Up to a $600 limit. I assume everybody knows how that works, but I wasn't sure myself, so I checked. So let's say you have a $1,000 electricity bill for this work. You can take 30% of that would be $300, right? And since it's under the $600 tax credit limit, you can reduce your cost by $300. Next slide. So let's visit Efficiency Maine. Let's visit their website now and take a look at some of the rebates and some of the other features. It's a very rich website. Sometimes it's a little hard to find things at it. And so I want to recommend to you that there is a toll-free number, very easy to find on their website. Their toll-free help is available weekdays only during the day. And if you call with a question, the operator who takes your call connects you with somebody who's an expert in that particular field of what Efficiency Maine does. So it's a great thing to know about. Next slide. One of my favorite pages on the Efficiency Maine website is this one. It's a cost of heating calculator. And if you look across the bottom of the slide, you can see all the different ways that you can heat your home. And the white dollar amounts at the top of each bar, that's the annual amount spent on average for that particular kind of heating right here in Maine. And I downloaded this web page on January 14th because it's changed. They update it every month. And the other cool thing about it is that you can put in your own numbers in a calculator that's related to this graph on their website. And if prices have changed or you want to model something else cost-wise, you can do that. Now, I've highlighted with red arrows 2 bars. The 3,373 bar is heating with an oil boiler. And I highlighted that one because more people in Maine use oil than any other heating source for their space heating of their homes. And that's the annual cost on average, about $3,373. The other arrow down on the left, 1,698, that's the cost of operating a ductless heat pump for a year. It's less than half of the oil. Now, in fairness to the oil folks, this is not an apples to apples comparison because a ductless heat pump is not sending air to all the rooms in your home. So it can be somewhat important if you get a heat pump to have a fairly open floor plan where the air gets moved around. But in our case, we have a 2-story home and we have 2 heat pumps. So our heating costs may come right around very close to what we're spending on oil. That hasn't been my experience, and I'm not sure why. I think that the upstairs heat pump is smaller, and I think that a lot of the heat from the ground floor makes its way up to the upper floor. So maybe we're only using about 1.5 heat pumps as we keep our home warm. I just wanted to be fair here about that. So let's go to the next slide. Here's Andy Meyer, the senior outreach guy for Efficiency Maine, explaining how a heat pump works. It has 2 parts, the head mounted on the wall inside the home and the condenser unit on the outside. And what's going on here is that when it's cold out, The heat pump is moving heat from outdoors, which seems counterintuitive, to the inside. And it's doing that by compressing or decompressing gas. I can't remember which way it works, but that's the way the warmth is harvested from outside cold air. And then in the summertime, it reverses and can act as an air conditioner. Only to me, it's quieter than an air conditioner. It's very, very nice. And Efficiency Maine has had a hard time convincing people that these things work at really cold temperatures, but there's plenty of evidence that even down about minus 15 degrees, they work just fine. They use more energy to get the job done, but they're still viable, and Efficiency Maine is very anxious for people not to turn on their backup heat if they have an oil burner as well, or something else like natural gas, when they should just be letting their heat pump run. Something else, but it'll come back to me later. Next slide. So let's look at the rebates. We'll take a quick look. It's really complicated enough that you want to go to Efficiency Maine website or have your contractor explain it if you get a contractor to do this. There's a new effort to provide rebates for whole house heat pump systems. These might have one outdoor unit that services 2 or 3 inside units in different rooms, and the rebates can be as high as $8,000. But notice the up to, that's very important to notice, because this will be the maximum rebate for somebody who's fairly low income. And then you can also take the federal tax credits up to $2,600. And then there are supplemental heat pumps, what we call, they used to call them mini splits. Now they're calling them ductless, because the outside unit is directly connected to the inside unit through the wall of one of the walls of the house, and they get tax credits too. Over on the right side of the slide, you're looking at a heat pump hot water heater. These are tall, and so that's one factor you need to consider when you decide where to locate them. You also want to make sure there's plenty of air circulation. They do cool off the air somewhat because they're harvesting the warmth from the air to heat your water. Lowe's has a particularly attractive deal right now. There's a $1,050 rebate or discount, they're calling it now. So that brings the price down to $349 for the physical purchase of the heat pump. And then what you as a homeowner want to remember is that unless you're handy with plumbing and electrical, you've got to get installed. And so plumbers and electricians do not come cheap, as you well know, I'm sure. So you're not going to have a heat pump water heater functioning for $349. But the latest wrinkle is, if you go to, say, Lowe's or Home Depot, I know they do this, there's a QR code near the hot water heater heat pump hot water heater that you're interested in purchasing. And if you focus your camera on that QR code, up will pop a website. You don't take a picture of it. You just focus the camera on it. Up pops a website on your camera screen. You click on that, and it takes you to a form that you can fill out right on your phone. And then you go, you've made your purchasing decision. You take this to the checkout counter, and you get the rebate as a discount, which is nice, because then you don't have to pay interest if you were going to purchase it with your credit card. You don't have to pay interest, well, if you pay the bill on time, I guess. Let's go to the next slide. So another useful page is at Efficiency Maine is the registered vendor page, where you can find an installer for some of these appliances that you might want to buy. And you can search by zip code so that you find somebody who's close to where you live. You can search by distance, 25, within 25 miles, within 10 miles, within 50 miles. And then you can also find out how many of what you're interested in, like a heat pump, hot water heater, say, how many they've installed. So when my sister-in-law's um, water heater failed, um, we chose a contractor who was right close to Harpswell, where she lives, and had done a lot of heat pump installations. And he came right out, got the job done. Next slide. So let's move on to weatherization. Next slide. So this is really about something we jokingly like to call negawatts, about kilowatts and megawatts. Well, this is negawatt. A negawatt is a unit of energy that you don't use. And obviously, if you don't use it, it saves you money. And many of us are still using fossil fuels to heat our homes. And if you can harvest your negawatts, obviously you're not going to be spending so much money on those things that are causing the bad things that are happening to our climate. And if you reduce your electricity use, you're also cleaning up, making it easier to clean up the grid, because there isn't going to be such a demand for more electricity. And it's important to remember that making these energy efficiency changes is not designed to make you more uncomfortable. It's designed to make you comfortable, because if you eliminate the drafts from the tiny little holes and places that cold air is getting in, obviously you're not only saving money, you're going to be much comfortable in your home when it's cold out. Next slide. So here on the right, we're looking at a schematic of a house showing where all the cold air gets in. Those are the blue arrows, the purple arrows, and where the warm air gets out. And you'll notice generally the warm air is going up, because warm air is lighter than cold air, so it rises, and that creates what's called the stack effect, which creates the drafts in your home and wastes the energy that you are spending on. So one thing that contractors do, if you haven't seen this before, is to set up a blower door test. The technician with his computer there in the middle of the screen has set up a blower door test. It's a nylon form-fitting contraption that mounts in your door. Your door is open on the outside, and there's a fan in the bottom of it, and it sucks it sucks a lot of the air out of your house, depressurizes your house, and of course the effect then is it pulls in cold air wherever you have leaks in your building envelope. Often a second or third person comes along with a caulking gun or a little smoke candle or a an infrared camera, and they see where the air is coming in with these devices and caulk them on the spot while the air is being pulled out of the home. There's a fairly inexpensive way to get this done through Efficiency Maine without having a whole house energy audit, which is quite expensive. And so that's something you might want to look into. So the guy on the left there, he's caulking while the guy downstairs is quantifying how much heat you're losing out of your home. Next slide. So the picture is somebody's attic. Probably there's 12 or 14 inches of loose fill insulation there. If they've done the job right, it would probably be that thick. Unfortunately, if you're in a house that already has insulation in the attic, it's hard to get at some of the places that you might be losing your warm air downstairs, because it's going up through light fixtures, plumbing penetrations. These are things that are hard to find unless you want to go wandering around in 12 or 14 inches of loose fill insulation. But look at the rebates. They're very substantial. up 30% up to $1,200. Um, I'm sorry, not rebates, these are tax credits. $250 for a new door, towards a new door, $500 maximum. Windows, new replacement windows, tax credit of up to $600. But be very careful because the doors and the windows have to be certain designs, even brands. You have to go to the IRS website, or your contractor will, and he'll know or she'll know uh, which um, which windows will or doors will qualify and which won't. So the other thing about this is that some of these tax credits from the Inflation Reduction Act reset every year. So that $1,200 cap, uh, um, if you time do your if you time your projects to go from one year to the next, you can reharvest the same tax credit several times over a number of years. Next slide. So this is about windows. Windows are a blessing and a curse. The Department of Energy says that about 30% of um, your money is being spent on heat that goes out through the windows. Of course, it's wonderful to have light and in the wintertime and fresh air in the summertime when you open a window. But of course, that run in the winter, if you have leaky old windows, you have larger energy bills. Next slide. So there's a nonprofit that I've been involved with for over a decade called Window Dressers. It was started in Rockland, Maine, and since 2011, Window Dressers has built with community groups all over the state of Maine and all over the state of Vermont, and now also in New Hampshire, 68,000 insulating window inserts. So the woman in the slide is holding an insert. It's a 1x2 frame with foam weather stripping around the outside. It's screwed and glued in the corners, and it has 2 layers of polyolefin, one on each side. Volunteer measurers come to your home, measure each window individually. We guarantee they'll fit. It's a pressure fit, so they're easy to take out if you don't want them in during the warm weather. And they'll last for around 10 years or so. Eventually, the polyolefin plastic will fail. They're vulnerable to cats swatting at flies and cactuses, cacti that you have on your windowsill. But they make a huge difference. And one way I know this for sure is I've had them in my homes, not everywhere, but in the windows that need them the most. And on a really, really cold day, where before I installed the insert, there was condensation all over the window. When you put in one of these inserts, I've never seen a drop of moisture on the inside. And that's because the surface on the inside is warmer, um, and you're not losing as much energy. They're pretty good looking, and you can sign up for them at our website, which is windowdressers.org, all one word. And the other cool thing is that we raise money from foundations and contributors, individuals, and we are able to supply about 1/3 of our inserts free at no cost to low-income customers. And we don't have any paperwork when the measures come. If it's clear that somebody is struggling to pay their energy bills, we can provide up to 10 inserts. Now, there's a catch here, and the catch is a wonderful catch, actually, I think. The catch is that you have to help build the inserts. If you can't, because you work, you send somebody else, or you come to one of our evening or weekend shifts. And in the course of a week here in Brunswick, we build about, next year, we're going to try to build 300 of them. And they'll probably go to about 25 or 30 different families. And so that's just something I wanted you to be aware of, even though it doesn't qualify for a tax credit or a rebate. The average cost for one of these for a mid-sized window is about $45. And that we know that is exactly what it's costing us. We have a very small staff and so forth, and then there are the materials involved. Next slide. Solar systems. We're getting there, folks. Solar is clean, no carbon or methane pollution, locally produced right here in Maine. You don't have to have a truck come to your house to get that electricity. With net metering, a solar owner in Maine is credited for the excess power generated that goes out to the grid. So you may be making more electricity than you're using, and you get a 1-for-1 credit for that, so that when the sun isn't shining, like at nighttime, for instance, you can take electricity back from the grid and it won't cost you. Of course, it's important to size the solar system approximately the size of your usage. If you make it too big, you're throwing away money. Usually they make it a little bit smaller than your usage. Solar is difficult to finance. It's expensive. 3 or 4 years ago, when my church put solar on their roof, the system cost $23,000. And I'll tell you how we financed it on the next slide, I think. Go ahead. Oh, well, first the tax credits. They will be available until 2033. So this is something you can take your time about if you want to raise the cash to pay up front. It allows you to deduct 30% of the total cost of installing a solar energy system from your taxes. So $24,000 system, that would be close to $8,000 off the cost. And you can carry the tax credit over from 1 year to the next if you don't have enough of a tax liability to get it all in the first year. And there's a website that's quite informative about solar here on this slide. It's called energysage.com/solar. Okay, next slide. So the picture here is of an electrician at my church. He's installing the inverter. Solar electricity is made from the panels in DC form, direct current, and it has to be converted to alternating current before you can use it in your electrical needs in the building, and you certainly can't send it out to the grid until it's converted. So that's a part of the cost of the solar system. You need to own your own home obviously, and to install solar. You need to have the right to install it on your roof. There can be land use code restrictions in some places. And you might want to think, if your roof is in tough shape, to get it re-roofed before you put the panels up, because it costs several $1,000s to remove it and put it back up. And then you want to pay attention to the home orientation and the tree shading. And the way you do that is you hire a contractor to come out. He'll go up on your roof with a wonderful machine that tells you about all that. Next slide. So solar panels in Maine pay for themselves in roughly 9 to 12 years, but the panels will function for 25 to 30 years. So you can use the money you're saving on your energy bills. We have a community solar farm share, and our bills for most of the year are down around, they're under $20 each month. And you also might want to consider oversizing the solar system if you think there's a possibility you might get an electric vehicle in the next couple of years, or even several years, because then you're powering your car for free energy. Next slide. So here we are celebrating when our panels finally went up. That's my church, the green building. We discovered we were in a historic zone where solar was forbidden. That's why I mentioned the land use code. We had to spend an extra year working with the planning board to get them to change the zoning regulations, and we were successful. So now, with the proper preparation and the proper qualifications, you can have solar panels in the historic zone um, that are visible from the street. Now, the way we financed ours was we found three lenders, actually four lenders, excuse me, who lent us at a 3% rate, and we're paying them back over 5 years, and then we'll own the system free and clear. If you belong to a nonprofit that would like to do something like that, by all means call me. I can tell you more. The way a homeowner is more likely to get a loan is if you can, with a home equity line of credit. The interest rate is usually pretty low, and interest rates are coming down now with inflation more under control. So a loan is definitely something to consider because this is a big expense to get it up and running. Next slide. Oh, by the way, we didn't have we couldn't take a tax credit because we're a nonprofit, right? So the church doesn't benefit from that. Okay, we're into our last topic, and I'm going a little over. I'm sorry, I have a tendency to talk a little too long, but we'll go pretty quick. Next slide. What's to like about electric vehicles, or EVs as they're called here? Well, they cost less than a gas vehicle to operate. There's reduced maintenance, fewer moving parts, no oil changes, no exhaust system to worry about. You you can charge them overnight at home, and they're really fun to drive. We bought ours a year and a half ago, and my wife didn't want me to buy it, and now I can't pry it out of her hands. um, and the main thing is they're cleaner. They're really clean. There are fewer emissions, cleaner air, less dependence on fuels from away as well. Next slide. So that's the smaller version of the car we bought. It was a Chevy Bolt, which unfortunately is no longer in production, but there were so many people yelling at Chevrolet when they took it out of production, and they're going to put it back into production in 2025. And last winter, when we bought ours, if you qualified for the tax credit, there are income restrictions on that. You could have this car. It's very small, but it's very nicely done for under $20,000 after the $7,500 rebate. So I'm a little sick and tired of these $50,000 Teslas and other very expensive vehicles. We need more of these more affordable vehicles like the Nissan Leaf and the Chevy Bolt, and I'm sure that they will be coming to the market. It's really important that we do something about transportation because 54% of Maine's carbon pollution comes from fossil fuel transportation. And a typical gas vehicle emits over 5 tons of CO2 per year, more than 4 times the amount emitted from an electric vehicle charged from the New England grid. Now, if you have a solar panel, a solar system large enough to charge your car with, then you're doing really well. And get this, if we went fully electric, which I don't think we will, but if we went fully electric nationwide by 2035 on electric vehicles in the whole country now we're talking about, not just Maine, we could avoid over 89,000 premature deaths, over 2 million asthma attacks, and harvest close to $1 trillion in public health benefits. Well, one of the things I like best about electric vehicles is that they don't cause air pollution. Next slide. So just quickly, there's a lot of concern about range and charging, and there shouldn't be. I wouldn't own an electric vehicle if it was the only car I had, because I have a son in Connecticut that I need to visit, and I'm impatient about the charging because there aren't enough charging stations that are functioning well without interrupting your trip for several hours at a time. The Bolt doesn't charge particularly quickly. But there are new batteries on the horizon, already factories being built for them. They're called solid state batteries. They don't use lithium or as much lithium, I'm not sure. And they are really, they give you more range and they're going to be less expensive, and they're going to be easier to recycle. So there's going to be a lot of change that's coming our way. And so the misinformation you hear about this being such an awful thing to have an electric vehicle, I think it's a bunch of baloney, frankly. Um, Over on the right are the three ways you can charge an electric vehicle. You can plug it into the regular outlet in the wall, but it's pretty slow, might take 13 hours. You can use a 240 volt circuit, what we commonly call a dryer circuit that would operate your dryer, and get it charged overnight in 7 hours. And it varies from vehicle to vehicle, of course. Or you can go to a DC charger, which is called the level 3. You find these at dealerships. Tesla has a bunch of them. But it's not necessarily good to use those too often because they degrade the battery a little bit faster. And down in the box at the bottom of the slide, Maine has received a $15 million federal grant to install nearly 600 vehicle charging stations in more than 70 cities and towns. And that money is just about to arrive here. They started by putting the chargers along the interstate routes. They wanted to do those first. But now they're thinking more about people who don't own homes, who need to find a way to get their cars charged in more urban areas and towns. Next slide. So there's an awful lot to learn if you're going to buy an electric vehicle. And again, Efficiency Maine is a great place to go. The right side of the image here is I took off of the electric vehicle section on Efficiency Maine. You can see all the things that you can learn about there. There is a state incentive provided by the Volkswagen settlement that reduces the cost of your vehicle on top of the tax credit. But before you put any money down on any vehicle, you've got to be really careful about this because many don't yet qualify for the tax credit in the United States. You actually need to copy down the VIN number and then go to a certain website and find out where it was manufactured. Because if it wasn't manufactured in North America, you don't get the rebate. And this is changing all the time. More and more vehicles are going to become eligible because the car manufacturers want to be selling cars in this country. And there's been some controversy about it because of these restrictions. But obviously, the administration wanted to help American car manufacturers first. I get that. So that's why that is. Okay, next slide. So tax credits, $7,500 on a new vehicle, $4,000 on a used vehicle. And now those tax credits, you don't have to wait for the year following when you purchase the vehicle. That's a change in 2024. When you purchase the vehicle, the dealer takes the tax credit and passes the savings on to you. So that means you can take out a smaller loan, which is great. You can also get a tax credit on the installation of home charging equipment, up to a $1,000 limit. Next slide. And the latest news from Augusta is that they are now going to have an electric bike incentive coming soon. I was a little confused by this at first, wondering why the heck are they doing this? But then I thought about all the people I see on the side of the road, walking to work, riding a bicycle to work, people who obviously don't have the income to own a car. And I've been told that this bill is going to be set up particularly for low-income folks who need some form of electrified transportation to get around. And so I think that's great. Next slide. That's it. Lots to think about, many opportunities to make our homes more energy efficient using tax credits and rebates, electrifying everything that we can, tightening up our homes, solar options, and electric vehicles. I didn't talk much about the solar options, but obviously rooftop or community solar farm, or the deal where you get a discount on your electricity bill of 10 or 15%. So my advice to you, if you are interested in any of this stuff, is to make a plan. And it should be a multi-year plan, probably, especially if you're going to get solar. It gets confusing to try to do a lot of things at once, at least for me at my age. And so I really recommend getting familiar with whatever it is you want to do first and getting it done. It's a wonderful feeling when it's done, even if you're a little bit poorer for a while, and keep at it until the end goal, of course, in my book, is to try to get off of fossil fuels as much as you possibly can. Next slide. So I asked Danny Meyer of Efficiency Maine, what should I tell people about where they start? And he said, well, you know, people think you have to get an energy audit first before you do anything else. And those cost about $500. He said, let people start wherever they want. They may want to start saving money with a heat pump, and then make a plan and go one step at a time, as I said earlier. I forgot to read you two factoids, and then I'll stop. Nearly one out of every heat pump. Wait a minute. Efficiency Maine rebates a heat pump on average of every 5 to 6 minutes, 24 hours a day. So they're really going off the shelves because they save you money. And nearly one out of every 10 heat pump hot water heaters sold in the country is also being sold right here in Maine. So we've made a great start as a state to do something about climate change. And thank you very much for listening. Go to the next slide. I think there's one more. Oh, just a reminder about Rewiring America and Efficiency Maine, the two useful links I suggested. Next slide. So thanks for coming tonight. If I had been there with you, I would have had some materials on a table so you could see what Citizens Climate Lobby is. And that's a picture of us standing outside the United States Capitol last June. I think Roberta was there, weren't you?
Not this one,
Okay.
but I know exactly where the main contingent stands.
Okay.
Right below that man way up at the top there.
Yeah, right. And my phone number is there. If you guys need to be in touch for any reason, I'm happy to take your call. I've so enjoyed talking with you. I'm sorry it's been such a one-way conversation, but I hope that you harvested something from it. Thank you very much.
Sam, that was great. I'm just trying to think of how many websites someone would have to visit to get all the information that you just gave. And nobody would be willing to do that. Plus, the way that you add your own experience, something that, you know, probably wouldn't be on a website. So thank you so much. And I'm hoping that with the recording, this lots and lots of people will get some really good information.
Well, thank you.
If nobody else has questions, then I do.
You're in charge.
Oh, we can't hear you, Jess. And I didn't see anything in the chat.
They're probably, I talk so fast, they're probably
Bethany?
busy.
I do. Yes. I have a question. I'm actually a property manager.
Yeah.
So we are constantly doing this kind of work. And, you know, for me to be able to be educated and talk about this in an educated fashion, I didn't know what resources there are. I know you've given a little bit of an update, but obviously a lot of what I do is multifamily. And so it's kind of a different rebate system and different kinds of energy efficiencies that can be gained. But many of the people I manage for are interested in these kind of things.
Yeah. There is so much. I mean, this was confined to single home, residents, and And there's too much for me to know that I can't know. I'm just, I'm just,
Exactly.
I'm just a volunteer. I'm not a professional. I would reach out to Efficiency Maine or to the Maine Department of Housing. Do you have anything to do with that? Um, I know they have a lot of programs.
Okay.
There might be something there for you. Um, I don't know about the Greater Portland Council of Governments. That might be another place. But where are you finding the information you need?
Um, Last year I had an investor send me like some random page of credits,
Yeah,
but we're kind of bootstrappy. So
yeah, yeah,
we don't do we're pretty behind the scenes. We don't do a lot of like getting out there and networking and that kind of stuff. We're just on the ground making things happen.
yeah.
So, having those resources to, for example, I'm probably replacing a hot water heater once every couple weeks, right?
Hmm.
Um, so to help make those good decisions, know the resources, know how to utilize the credits in the multifamily setting.
Yeah. I don't know anything about that. I'm sorry. Let me tell you a quick story though. My sister-in-law that had the heat pump, not had the hot water tank fail. Um, she she could have qualified for a free heat pump because she's on main care,
Okay.
and she has disabilities. She's on a walker. She's blind in one end. She can't. She wasn't even in the basement. She didn't know that her hot water tank was leaking. And when the technician came out, and the technician works for a company that sells heat pump hot water heaters, all he said to her was, "Get a new tank and hook it up to your oil boiler." So, that's first of all not good for the climate, and second of all, it's costing her a lot more money. A heat pump hot water heater will save, over the 10-year
Right.
warranted life. So in the end, she did get in touch with Efficiency Maine, found out who to call, and the contractor list, it was restricted. It wasn't any hot water tank contractor, and there was a month-long wait. And here she is with a tank that's about to fail and dump 80 gallons of water or 50 gallons of water all over the floor. So she had to take $3,700 out of her retirement savings and go with a contractor who she liked. So it wasn't all bad, but it's so typical with these government programs that the more you know and the more you'll read the small print, the better off you'll be.
Right. And for me it's like it's I have the opportunity to educate people on these things, but I don't have that education myself.
Yeah.
So it's how do I get connected with that right information so I can advise things? Like, I've got a 3 unit and two of the stories don't have, any heat, right? So we're starting from scratch. And, I'm trying to have these conversations with the electrician and they don't really know the answers. Their first proposal is we'll do one heat pump and then electric baseboard. And, what you showed is really helpful for me now, your little graph.
Yeah. Yeah. Electric baseboard is the most expensive.
Right. So,
Any solution.
and I had kind of a gut about that. So, we walk through just doing multiple heat pumps instead and
Yeah.
everything like that. But even to know like what's the right layout to do and um,
Yeah.
how to take advantage of those rebates. I mean, if we can make a case for the value impact on that, it's a huge opportunity to make a big difference.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you read about the heat pumps that they are installing in New York City now? They're underneath a window, like what you see when you go to a motel and there's a heating unit, air conditioning unit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and they're installing those all over the place in New York City. That might be a solution for some of those
Wow.
apartments you were talking about.
So
Um,
kind of like where Renais are used right now in apartments.
yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
The other thing I would definitely do is I would call the toll-free hotline at Efficiency Maine and get connected to somebody there in that organization that could help you. I would think they would have a lot of good advice.
Okay. I can try doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that cost of heating calculator could be helpful in convincing people that it's a good idea.
Definitely. I think
And that
that's
was
huge.
from Efficiency Maine.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Roberta, you had a question.
I do actually, with the hot water heater. If I got you right, it's using the air. If it's in your basement, it's using the air from your basement. So I guess, does it have to have some kind of duct work? Or I don't know if duct is the right word, but something that vents from the outside, or is it just using what's inside the basement so it doesn't need any outside?
It just uses what's inside.
Yeah, right,
And I
right,
think
right.
it reduces the temperature by just 1 or 2 degrees, and at least in our basement, it's not significant. We don't heat our basement. We have hot water radiators fueled by the oil burner. We don't run the oil burner. So our basement is cold, and I've tried to figure out whether I wanted to insulate under the main floor, and our main floor doesn't seem to be too cold. It's carpeted in the living area. So
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to know. There's always compromises if you're working with an older home and not starting fresh.
Right. So you could have an oil burner with a heat pump um, hot water heater.
Yes,
Yeah.
I do. I do.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it works fine. Forgotten where I was going to go with that. We had a propane hot water heater fail at my church, and the repair was going to be $4,200. It was up in the attic, and they were going to repair it, and I said, no, stop. And I got Fred Horsch out. You know who Fred Horsch is? He's a energy efficiency guy.
Right.
In Brunswick, and a really nice guy. And he owns I should have mentioned this to, what was her name? Barbara?
Bethany.
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 Fred Horsch is, if you're still there, Bethany, is an energy efficiency consultant who does great work. And his company is called Spark Applied Efficiency. And he helped us at our church. We had a situation where we had to put the heat pump hot water heater. There was no basement, in a bathroom, and we had to arrange for a fan to come on when the door was closed, and stuff like that. But he just did a huge job for the Fork Food Lab in Portland, which is one of the 3 largest food labs in the country. And so he would surely know where to send you if he couldn't answer your questions.
Okay. And tell me the name of his company again.
Spark Applied Efficiency.
Okay.
And his
Great.
name is Fred Horsch, Horch. He's the nicest guy I'd ever want to meet. So
Great. Thank you so much.
yeah. Anything else?
I just had a couple comments. A fun aside, there was a picture of my husband in the slide deck because he was the crew lead, I guess, for your church solar install. His name is Ian Hubbard. So he used to work for Maine Solar Solutions.
Yeah.
And so he helped with that install, but now he works for Clean Tap Energy, which is in Gray.
It's a small world in Maine.
Yeah.
Wow. So was he the electrician, or was he up in the roof?
He was up on the roof. He was the crew lead on the roof, the guy with the dark curly hair and the blue t-shirt. That's my husband.
Well, say hello to him. He probably won't remember, but I was gawking up at him most of the day.
I definitely will say hello for you. And then the other thing that I wanted to comment about was I love that term megawatts. I actually hadn't heard that before. And that's a great concept because, one of the solutions is just to not use as much energy in the first place. And I think about, turning off lights that I don't need. And I think about my neighbors next door that just run their lights all night outside, and it
Yeah.
would just save them so much energy if they would turn those off at night.
And terrible for migrating birds and
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. So, oh gosh, something else occurred to me, but it's already gone. This happens to old people.
Well,
That
I can,
happens to me.
I could fill in with the question, or well, actually, it's not a question, comment.
Yeah.
I appreciate that you mentioned that you don't need the whole house audit. And I did not know that how they determine where the leaks are coming, and that they could go around and caulk as they go.
As
Um,
the
as they find
door.
yeah,
Yeah.
which, because that's a good option, because we were thinking about, the cost of an audit and all that. Do we really need it? But, that is a great
Now
option.
I had that done on this house and the last house we owned, and it used to be called the air sealing program, and it included a before and after door report on, before they sealed and after they sealed, so they could show you that before they left or when they
Excellent.
wrote up their report how much money they had already saved you just with caulk.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they work around fireplaces in the attic, so chimneys in the attic to solve problems there. That's another commonplace. Yeah, so I think they've split it up now. I'm not sure how it works, but I think it's in the somewhere between $400 and $600 or $700. But you spend $500 on an energy audit alone. The other thing I forgot to say is a caution about moisture, because you don't want to be doing all this house tightening and if you have a moisture problem, because tightening everything up can make it worse and cost you a lot of money. And I should have mentioned that, but the hordes of people that were watching probably knew about that already.
Well, it's in there now. Yeah, see,
Right.
that's something that I wouldn't get from a website. I
Right.
would never think it would just say, make it airtight, make it airtight. That's great.
Yeah. Well, any company that does this kind of work worth their salt will tell you
Oh,
that,
should.
you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Home Energy Performance, I think it's called, is one that does that.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thanks
Okay.
you guys.
Thank you
Thank
so much,
you,
Sam.
Sam.
Very informative. And we will have this available on the town's YouTube, this recording. So I'm going to stop recording now, and I guess we can say good night too.
Could you send me the link? I always like to navel gaze a little bit and see what I
Yes.
said that I didn't mean to and all that stuff,
Yeah.
That was great.
It was wonderful, Sam. Thanks so much.
You're very welcome. Have a good night, you guys. Hope to see you
Good-
around the neighborhood.
All
Yes,
right.
for sure.
Good
Take
night.
care.